Have a loud voice, but I am the Preservation Planning and Development Coordinator at the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. So I oversee the Federal Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program, the Certified Local Government Program, and Preservation Planning at the office, among other things that we all kind of do at the office. I've got three lovely participants, very knowledgeable here with me today. I'm going to facilitate the discussion, but this is really more about them and you all, so you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and hopefully learn some stuff today. So we're going to talk about what is a historic district good for anyway, which is a question I think a lot of people ask, and hopefully we can answer that. This is just a brief rundown of our bios. They were also in the program, and I'm going to do overview and introductions. We're going to make sure we touch on creating and establishing historic districts, managing and maintaining them, and then hot topics and challenges. So why do we have local historic districts? What's the point? The RSA has a few reasons for establishing districts, but really what it boils down to is we want to honor our heritage. We want to support sound community planning and development. We want to make sure that we make informed and careful choices about our built history. We want to maintain that community character and support livability and support sustainability. You know, the greenest building is an already built one. What does preservation mean in local historic districts? Managing change. It does not mean keeping things from changing. It means managing change in a way that is suitable to your community. And that's why the control is really at those local levels. Keeping buildings in active use. That is the best thing for a building. It's the best tool for preservation is to make sure it's continually used. Saving resources for future generations, and ensuring a record of yesterday's materials, design, and craftsmanship. So what does preservation not mean?
Asbestos,
So it doesn't mean keeping buildings and neighborhoods under a bell jar. Again, I really go back to the point of local historic districts and preservation in general is meant to manage change appropriately. It doesn't mean you're preventing it. It's inevitable, but if you can manage those choices and make sure that they're thoughtfully done, that the building and your history is taken into account, and that you're making the right choices for your community, then you're really adhering to the true heart of preservation. Aesthetic policing. Again, you really want to think about what your goals are of preservation, and aesthetic policing doesn't necessarily fall under those goals all the time. And promoting a false sense of history. And, sometimes you fall kind of into the other trap where you want to make sure that everything is kind of totally in line, and then you might get confused in your district about what's actually historic and what's not. So those kind of fall under generally what we say preservation does not fall.
Give an example of a false sense of history.
Sure. So usually when in our office and in a lot of preservation applications, we use the Secretary of the Interior standards. And if you're not familiar with them, there are multiple sets of standards. Usually we use rehabilitation as the most common set. And promoting a false sense of history or creating a false sense of history is against those standards. And so an example of that would be if you've got a neighborhood that's full of Italianate buildings and you've got some infill construction coming in, you don't want them to build an 1860 accurate Italianate design. You want them to be compatible but still differentiated as a new building. Mm-hmm. So you may want them to use a different kind of material but still have the same scale and massing. You may want them to use, maybe put some corbels up, but they're not as detailed. They're kind of more simplified, things like that. So you want it to be compatible, but you don't want it to be an exact replica.
So if it's an interpretation, you don't necessarily advocate fakery, but like some buildings are going to have had bad things done to them over the year, and over the years, you might choose to restore something that once really was there.
Absolutely, yes. On a historic building, yeah, you usually want to have documentation that that item was there so that you're putting it back correctly. Yep, you don't want to put something that may not have been there historically. You do want to be sure it was there.
So follow up on that.
Yep.
So if you do not have any pictures, records of what the building looked like when it was built, and you want to, you know, you have assumptions based off of just your knowledge of other buildings in the area, what would be the recommendation for, I guess, restoration?
You know, I think that's an interesting question, and I think, given that we're talking about historic districts, I don't want to get too much into my SHPO hat here. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, because my answer may be different than your community.
Sure, I understand that.
So I would say that, you know, what the community folks might do, I want you guys to answer that if you're comfortable with that. Anybody? But I would think that you would want to at least see what you can find, look at the time period of the building, that kind of thing, and then the community, the folks on the board who are the experts in their community can decide maybe what direction they would advise a homeowner or property owner to take.
Yeah, so basically, like DHR doesn't have guidelines for that.
So we would follow the Secretary of the Interior standards, and my answer would be, if you don't know exactly what was there, you don't want to do conjecture. You just want to keep what you have and don't
Even if
add.
it's not historically accurate at all. Like vinyl window, for example, you have vinyl windows. I mean, you want to say, for example, get rid of the vinyl windows and put something that's more historically correct. I mean, we know vinyl was not historically correct.
No, but you can just do simple and compatible. It doesn't have to be historically correct. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't have to assume it had a certain, you can if you want to, or you can just keep it simple and do a 1/1. There's nothing wrong with a 1/1 window if you don't know what was there.
Sure, okay.
From my point
Well, that
of view,
answers my
again,
question,
it's going to be,
so.
yes. From my point of view, again, your community though may know for a fact that they had a certain window pattern that was very, very common.
Sure.
And in that case, they may say, no, it's very likely it had this,
Yeah.
so you should do this.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody want to take a stab, or do you want to move on?
I will. In Exeter, we have an historic district commission that has been for a long time, have people that have no relation to architecture or preservation whatsoever. What they're learning from some of us who have been on the commission for a long time. So instances like that might just sail through and say, yeah, do whatever you want. But other times, if you come in with a question and say, can I do these things, the commission will work with you and say, do you know it's there? And if you don't, they can, you know, some of us can say, well, it's probably something like this, but we don't know for sure. And it's just a work session. It's not a, please give me my application approval now, unless you want that. But the commission will work with applicants to get to a reasonable solution, give them ideas of like the massing and the solid to void situation that you might have. Was there anything around? Interiors we don't deal with at all. At the HTC, it's all about the exterior. So I would ask, you know, I would ask them first, or approach the HTC first and say, can you work with me on this? Or have a Heritage Commission, the same thing. Find out what you can and then do the least amount of harm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a quick rundown of HDCs in New Hampshire. It's authorized by this RSA, which gives the local body the authority to create and regulate local historic districts. It is one of the most effective and comprehensive tools for managing change in a historic area in the state. Ensuring that new construction and significant alterations to historic or existing buildings are respectful of the existing character. Can be any shape or size, as we'll learn today. And they usually take the form of a zoning overlay district. Some towns are set up differently, but this is the most common setup. Julie, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little overview of Exeter, where we are?
Yes, hi, Julie Gilman. Welcome to town. I'm on the select board, member of the select board since 2007. I'm a state representative, and I've been the select board representative to the Historic District Commission and the Heritage Commission my whole entire life. These are two of our three districts, and these were all started by citizens making a big push that demanded that this be recognized as places that we want to preserve and not have kind of ruin the texture by putting something new and a totally different use, different look. But it could be similar, it could be new, but let's treat it nicely. And it was instigated by a lot up here in the corner town where a gas station was being proposed, tearing down a building to do it, a nice Georgian building, Georgian. And then on the corner where me and Ollie's is also, the Folsom Tavern was moved up there because a gas station wanted to go in there. And those two things kind of set everybody else up, severed everybody up. And so by petition, an area was designated in the Front Street Historic District here on the left. I made a mistake by including the mills up on the right there because those are not actually an Exeter's defined historic district, because I think the owner at the time probably didn't want it. That was in 1971. But when we put it on the National Register, the National Register folks said, oh, you gotta include that. So this is a map of what they have on the register, and you can slice off the mills to show what we're doing. And then and then that led to the preservation of the waterfront commercial district on the right, and that covers everything from, that isn't covered right there. The Front Street one starts way down a few blocks in front of the Catholic Church, but does not include the Catholic Church because that was built in the 60s, and at the time it was not a contributing thing. But it does include Gale Park, which is our World War I memorial, and it starts down there, comes all the way down through to the bandstand. Includes, I'm talking about the wrong one. Includes the bandstand on this side of Water Street. And then, the Water Street commercial on the right.
Did I mislabel it?
Yeah, you got them on the right here.
Sorry.
In my mind, they're different.
Okay.
Okay, so the Front Street Historic District was first. The bottom left is the green Gale Park. That's where it starts, and then you see it goes around the corner and includes the bandstand and the town hall, and this side of Water Street on that one block. And that was, the extent of it was a decision made by, I don't know who, I don't know if they consulted with the property owners or not, but they're recognized as the important pieces of architecture that we wanted to maintain. Quite a few of them are from the 17th and 18th, early 18th century. And then some are iconic, just the ones in front of the town hall. They're all painted yellow. I don't think it would matter what happened to those buildings as long as the roofs and the trim and the yellow stay. And then, so subsequently, the waterfront commercial district had occurred, and that took the whole other side of Water Street that backs up on the water. And you'll see that, so that is kind of contiguous. It picks up on the Front Street Historic District where that ends. The waterfront historic district continues down Water Street towards the west. Yeah. We have a third district called the High Street Historic District. They all meet down here by the Great Bridge, all of the districts. I didn't put the High Street District on here. It's new-ish. It was established in 2006, and it is quite extensive. It goes from downtown Exeter to almost the Hampton Falls line, up to Drinkwater Road. And it goes that long because the people at the end wanted to be protected in an historic district. Otherwise, we would have made it shorter. The process for creating an historic district involves getting approval from the planning board first, because they are in charge of the capital improvement plan and any development in town that has its review. So you have to go to the planning board and get their approval to put the idea on a warrant on the ballot. And when my husband and I actually organized the High Street Historic District movement, and we went to them and said, we have 60% of the residents that we knock on their doors, and they agreed this is a good thing. And the planning board said, no, come back with 80%.
Oh
So
my
we did, we
God.
went back out and picked up those other people, we came back with 85%. And the planning board said, no, come back with 90%. So we did, we went back out, we got 95%. So at that point, can they say no? I didn't think so. I think you were there, Lang. So it went on the ballot and it was approved. People had no problem. Now, it's a very different district because it spans the 18th century to the 21st century. So it's a good example of how the town grew out from the center and how the architecture changed and contributes in its way. And from answering your question, is there more I should say? I have plenty more to say.
I think just my question for you right now, because we'll move on to more introductions, but Julie, I did want to ask, which of these are you currently proposing to have surveyed for your upcoming grant?
The one that's not showing.
Okay.
We had put in a grant for the CLG. We were one of the early certified local governments, and I didn't want to advertise that because I don't competitive grant system. But we chose the High Street Historic District because that's where we see most of the business right now. People aren't changing their architecture down in these two National Register areas. What's happening is the more residential zone up on High Street, people want to change their windows and then change materials. They want to put additions. I think we've had one new building construction. So what we decided to do was we asked a couple of, where's Jen? We put out an RFP to look at each individual property, have a document sheet that shows the building, a photograph of the building, and then a list of what are the contributing resources to that building, what makes it architecturally important or historically important. It has a written description of its age and what the materials are, and this is something that I think will be a learning tool for our HDC members. We're doing a small section of the road first because we couldn't possibly do all 90 or however many we have. So it's scalable. So next year, I'm warning now, I'm going out for another grant to do the next group of them. It's going to be a great learning tool for both our members who have not know what they like but don't know what's appropriate. And it'll be a great tool for the property owners, so maybe they'll make a different decision on what they're going to do to their house or what materials they're going to use. And this is where we get into problems of support, so I'm going to leave that to the next part of the discussion. But I think it's going to be really helpful in many ways.
Thank you. I just wanted to use that as an opportunity to talk about survey and how important and helpful that can be.
I have a
Yes,
question, which I should know the answer to. Some of those lines go through a person's property rather than following property lines.
I just sort of took a big fat line and ran around
Well, I
it.
know
But
that's not accurate to it, but I think, as I understand, I might have property that's cut in half because of that.
I was just talking to somebody about that at lunch. We had a case on Front Street where the owner wanted to change something on the backside of his house. And right now we're defined as being, I think it's 200 feet from either the center of the street or the curb of the street, I forget. So their property extended beyond that 200 feet and they wanted to do something in the back. And we objected, the HDC objected because it was integrated into the project. So put a pause on, tabled the project, sent a letter to our lawyer and asked, is this part of our consideration? And the lawyer said yes. It's part of the whole project, even though it's beyond the 200 feet. So then the same building comes back to the HDC 10 years later, wants to change the same things that were changed again. And let me tell you about construction debris at a later time. And they had the same question. Why are you bothering with that? That's our whole thing. And we pulled out the letter from the first case and said, this is why, this is it. And so other people have just stopped asking the questions and just assumed that the back of their building is also part of the historic district.
So when we get to Portsmouth, we have a similar situation, and I'll tell you what we're trying to, how we're trying to remediate that.
So Reagan, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Reagan Rudig. I am now the chair of the Portsmouth Historic District Commission. I've been on it for 13 years now. And I'm a preservation professional, so this is sort of what I do in my day job as well as volunteering for my city. The Portsmouth Historic District was originally established in 1974 as part of, I don't know if you were around or remember, there was sort of a big revamp of Market Square at that time. And this has to do with the bicentennial and all of that stuff. And it was a battle. Maybe not, I don't think they got 95% of the people who wanted to be in it, but they did it, and it really was focused on the downtown and the south end. Over time, as you can see, it's kind of grown. In the 90s, I believe it came down Middle Street, which is that fat line. It was one of those zones where it was just like 300 feet from either side or something like that. And more recently, I think within the last 20 years, it went down Islington Street, which they captured every single parcel that fronted on Islington Street, so there was no confusion there. Just to kind of follow up on the question while we're talking about it, we're actually in the process now of recommending a revision to the historic district boundary along those areas so that we're just capturing the parcels that front on Middle Street and are sort of meant to be captured by that corridor. But if you have a corner of your house that is cut, is in the district, what does that mean? Are you not? So we're trying to clean that up, but that's of course a process where you have to go to the planning board and recommend it, and then they have to go to the city council, and they have to have the 3 different votes. And
Can I add something real quick in there, which might go to Elaine's question? I wanted to change the definition so it was just like that. It was just the complete parcel and not what half of your building is in there. And the reason we haven't done it is because the academy has a humongous lot of property from, even though it looks like individual lots, they've merged the lots together. So the back of their property is way
in the woods.
Yeah, so we couldn't make every historic district being that, or
Make one exception.
So
anyway, so we're a pretty big commission. We have 7 full members and 2 alternates, and we have over 300 properties that we look at, and it's similar to, it's the same as what Brandy was saying. We are managing change. We look at the exteriors and the exterior change. We do have a list of exemptions. So if you're doing just repairs, replacement in kind, things like that, you don't have to come before us. If you want to add like a play set to your yard or something like that, you don't have to come to us. So we have a lot of exemptions. We also have a list of design guidelines that we adopted in 2016. I know that Exeter used the same consultant that we used, and so we have very similar design guidelines, but we found that they are very helpful to people as long as they know that they exist. Sometimes this wonderful big document gets lost in City Hall or on the website, and a lot of applicants don't know it's out there. We'll point to it and say, go back. But it's a good, we have a mixture, obviously like Exeter, of downtown commercial buildings, 17th, 18th, 19th century residential buildings, as well as a lot of new developments. That big green blob up in the north part is the north end that was demolished in urban renewal. So that means we end up doing a lot of review of new construction, which is incredibly difficult for a historic district commission. So that's something that I think that we'll pick up on later. But it's a very varied district.
Okay, from one of the largest, if not the largest, to one of the smallest in the state. Tara?
Sure.
So our historic district was set off by the possibility of St. Joseph Church being demolished. And that really caused, probably what you were talking about as well, incredibly, the entire city pretty much lost it. And so there was a huge community push to what do we do? And what came out of that were two groups, actually. One was a group from the Catholic Church themselves, the local church, and one was community citizens that we were going in two different directions. One group was trying to figure out how do we deal with this financially, how do we save it financially, and the other group was trying to figure out how do we deal with this if we don't have the money. So I was part of the We Don't Have the Money group, and the church group was, we're going to go find some money. And we ended up talking to Andrew Cushing and the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance and kind of being, what do we do? We could do an easement, or we could do a historic district. And so we went with the historic district, and we thought that was more doable in the time frame that we needed. We were on a time limit to beat a demo permit. And so unfortunately, the demo permit beat us to City Hall before we could get all the steps in place that we needed to for City Council. But we felt very strongly that the district still needed to be created, and so that group continued to move forward. And the financial group continued to move forward. They are now the St. Joseph's Church Preservation Society, and 7-8 years later, our church still stands and will continue to stand. So we had some really great accomplishment out of that. The Historic District Commission that grew out of this small group created this small space, and it was not out of, it was definitely out of a lot of hard work. We went back and forth numerous times to City Council and the Planning Board on the actual ordinance pieces. A lot of the language had to be changed and so forth, and there was a lot of discussion. Surprisingly to, I think, our City Council and many people, it's hard to find people to sit on commissions, right? And you go and there's the same 10 people in the city that are sitting on every commission. So surprisingly, when they opened up the commission for people to volunteer for that, we had 15 people come forward.
That's awesome.
And it was a pick and choose. How many do we put on here? Who gets to go on there? So it was amazing. And that commission started in 2019, December of 2019 it was decided, and we sat until 2024. The commission is still in place, but I stepped out. I'm more of a doer. I don't have a lot of patience. And as we continued to have discussions on the district, it was becoming more obvious to me that there needs to be a whole lot more communication, although we have done a lot of communication with our council, our planning board, and our community, our downtown community, because this really fits. This is one street in Laconia in downtown, in the downtown area. And it really is a beautiful space. You have St. Joseph's Church, and then you have the Buzzell House, which is used to be the rectory for St. Joe's. And then you have the library, and you hop the street and you have Veterans Square, Depot Square, and the Veterans Memorials, and then you have the train station. And it's one of the most, I think, one of our most beautiful spots in Laconia. So that filled a really great space for our district. But for us, we felt that the district needed to expand. We had a lot of space downtown that we'd like to be inclusive of that. When that discussion kind of started, a lot of things started stopping. And so there was a rebirth of the whole language of the ordinances. And it went on for a very, very long time. And again, my patience, I found that there was better places for me to be to do the work that I like to do in history and historic preservation. So I stepped out of my position and went on to the historic society, that's what it is. So, but the district is still in place, the ordinances are still in place, but you heard the few buildings that are in there. We don't get a lot of business because nobody's really doing a lot of work, and the work that they're doing on St. Joe's now to get it up to code and so forth is all appropriate. So we're just kind of still moving along slowly.
Tara, is the board now, did other members also kind of step off with that?
Yeah, and it was for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I've worked with our city council members and our mayor on all kinds of different things. So I had a conversation, I wrote a letter, and I just said, just FYI, I'm not stepping up because I don't love it. I'm stepping up because I can't wait. I can't wait for this I just don't have it in my own personality to sit and wait for 3 more years for us to come up with a decision here. So unfortunately, the other issue that I felt was a real difficult one was the communication with our city businesses. And I spent with other board members, other commission members on foot several weeks, days of walking around downtown and having conversations one-on-one with business owners and business managers, letting them, what is a historic district and what does that mean to you and how does that affect you and what is your question and how can we answer it for you. It still wasn't, I don't think it was clear. I don't know if people were just not hearing us or not understanding it all. And our biggest issue was signage. I really felt like the biggest issue was signage, which was interesting to me. But
That businesses were concerned that they couldn't put the signage.
correct. Yeah, which was
But we had a similar thing, but the biggest problem was the timing, and that the HDC only meets once a month, and a business would move in and have to wait 3 weeks before they could put up the sign, if we approved it. And so what we ended up doing was changing the zoning ordinance for the code enforcement officer and the town planner or their designee to review the sign application and make the decision themselves. And so we need at least 2 people to decide. They know what materials are allowed and not allowed. So it really freed up businesses that wanted to open midweek and on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after our last meeting, they could put their sign up right away. So it's called a project of minimum impact, and so we do that for signs, and other people check. I'm just changing my wood porch to a wood porch, and they don't actually read the guidelines that say you can maintain your building if you don't change the materials. So
we utilize the same idea that the planning person could make that decision if they wanted to give us a call just to confirm or whatever. But it was more for us. It seemed to be more that we were telling them what they could and couldn't do. It came down to that type of discussion, and it seemed to kind of stop there sometimes and not be able to get past the fact that we even use the idea that we're really trying to help you as well. You have a beautiful shop with a beautiful facade, and you're bringing these people into your beautiful shop. It would be unfortunate that the guy next to you puts up a 900-foot, neon sign that blocks the beauty of your facade. But that didn't seem to resonate with many. So it's been a tough path for us, but I'm really happy that we still have the district we have. We're not done. I don't think we're done. But it's slow.
Have you ever, and I'm not sure this is the right application, but have you ever done a charrette on that? Because we've done a couple here in Exeter that have really helped evolve what's happened. And
We
I'm not
tried.
sure that historical district is a charrette thing, but.
Yeah, we tried to do something similar to that.
Yeah.
And so you wonder sometimes if the saving of St. Joe's, which was absolute, had to happen, if that was a strong enough catalyst to create a historic district, right? Because now the church is in place and will stand, but now the historic district seems to kind of be a secondary thought process for people. But it gets a little frustrating. We have a few buildings that are coming down now in Laconia. We have the Harris Family Furniture Building coming down. Taylor Community for the frontal building will come down, and we had a house on Prescott Hill that's coming down, and a lot of people became very frustrated by that. A lot on Facebook, back and forth. I don't generally post on Facebook in regards to things like that, but I did put in at one point, we have a historic district, and we could use some support in, we can't save it because it's owned by somebody. We can't just save it. But if we work together to try and create these historic districts, we could do this. There wasn't a whole lot of feedback from that either.
Well, isn't it interesting? I mean, there's things that are coming out in this conversation that are kind of behind the scenes, which is what's the best way, or what are ways that people have experience with of building a community understanding of what they have that is of value, which not everybody can articulate, right? So how do you get a consensus around understanding what makes a place, and some place that you want to be in, as opposed to, some place that gives you hives? How do you, what are the tools that people here experience to help build a master plan, help build the principles for motivating people to take care of historic structures? I think that's an interesting topic.
And incentives too, I think are important to all your points, because I think that part of that motivation is incentivizing property owners and having them realize that there is a reason for them to want to go and be a part of this. It sounds like maybe in Laconia, there might be property owners that just don't seem to see the benefit for some reason. I don't know what that is. And my question to you would be, do you feel that maybe there's a lot of people in Laconia that don't really care for historical preservation?
No, it's so weird. It's so interesting. No, I don't think that at all. I think there are a lot of people who really care about it. And the one thing I realized recently, we did a walkthrough through Harris Family and the 136 Prescott Hill. And I was thinking while we were walking through we're really lucky. They don't have to let us do this. They don't have to let me come in or anyone else come into these buildings before they tear them down. And the purpose was that through the Historical Society, we could gather or gain an item or a few items that we could then utilize in an exhibit to continue the story. And I will go to planning board meetings. I have gone and mentioned to the owners that are there to demolish their homes or whatever they're demolishing, to say, we know we can't stop you from taking down the building, but what we would love for you to do is consider allowing us a walkthrough, take a peek at what you've got, see if we can salvage something that we can then use to tell the story of the building in any exhibit that we put forward. And consider that whatever else you put up in its place, we will do a history of it for you, and then utilize that in your programming or your naming of your building or something of that nature. We're very lucky through the Historical Society that we have a team that does house histories. Do them all in Belknap County. They run the deeds, they run the family names, and we will make you a booklet of all the information. So the Harris Family Building, Family Furniture Building, we did a house history, and that's how the Heritage Commission kind of held for a while that there is historic significance in this building, and we need to reconsider what's happening here. And they use that report to document that, to make that statement.
He also mentioned the master plan. Another key place as those come up to be reviewed.
So
We got the model for it. It's right on line.
So Laconia
It works.
is our newest kind of little baby district, and it's having some not growing pains maybe. But Exeter and Portsmouth are long established, at least some of the districts. Julie, could you talk a little bit about if you've witnessed kind of some, pains and growing and shrinking and whatnot
Or
over the years?
successes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what helps, what's the motivators? What makes it go together?
Motivators are having people on your Historic District Commission or Heritage Commission that are willing to speak in a crowd, willing to speak to your governing bodies, select board, city council, whatever you have, who will then be convinced to take up this cause. One of the things that we had happen is the town old public library, which is now where the Historical Society is, just down the street, was our library and is our Civil War memorial. And it needed a new slate roof. It was leaking in just one certain area. And so we went to put that on the warrant, and the price for a completely new slate roof on a building that size was pretty high. And so there was tons of resistance to that. We're not paying that, we're not paying that. We finally, at the deliberative session, I had to say, this is our Civil War memorial. And everybody said, oh. And it changed the vote. We had changed the project so it wasn't the whole roof we were doing, it was just doing enough of the area where the leaks were. But even then, people didn't, why slate? Just take it all out and make it three tag asphalt and call it a day. But when I could communicate to everyone, as through the time, let's see, was it January through March, and even before that, talking about this being our Civil War memorial and how can you let it be less than that. So it's things like that, just having advocates who are willing to talk in front of a group like this.
Well, also, I guess what you're saying is you contextualize something that needs to be done in a way that people can put it in their heads and say, okay, yes, I agree, that deserves this kind of attention.
The home histories. Yeah. Our historic district will put, or Historical Society will do the same thing for you if you go in and ask what's my property like. And as on HDC, we get some pretty good pictures from them when people come in and say, I want to change the porch.
It seems like there's probably more sensitivity in a residential request than there is in treatments of public buildings. Is that your experience?
Yes and no. I think when there was a fellow that bought a lot of the waterfront district properties on the water side, really thought the Historic District Commission was just another, annual to go over, and the process just took too long. And he came in with a request that he had to lift the roof of the building because the structure was all springy. And I went to school for architecture, and I know about the modulus of elasticity and how buildings roofs do sag when you stand on them and then they spring back. But he would not, or his architect would not listen to that and decided that they needed to put up a whole new truss system, which raised the roof of the building up above the front facade. So he had to raise that. And also, let's say you can see it, it's the Odds Fellows Hall.
Yeah.
Had the sign was down in the lower band, and he just wanted to get rid of it because it was rotting. And we said, no, it's what it was. It was the Odd Fellows Hall, and we have to keep it. So he just placed it back up higher. But that fellow, when people told him that, oh, I'm so glad you saved the Odd Fellow Hall sign, he did a double take, and then he would come in and say, hey, I'm doing this, in the next building, I know you don't like this kind of thing, so we're gonna do it this way. And, it really turned around a lot of the people downtown to kind of respect where they were, even though they were just renters.
Julie, can you share a little bit about your experience with managing the district and changes that you've seen over the years in maybe the way the HDC operates or responses you've received from the public, things like that?
Sure. I'll say the Front Street Historic District, which is pretty much remarkably in place between the 18th century and 19th century buildings, grand housing. The Academy owned a lot of it and really preserved it very well. And so that was easy. They knew what we expected. We knew what we could expect of them. Everything was easy peasy. When it got down to the downtown, it would be newer people mostly that did not want to have that other hurdle of government that they needed to go through to do whatever it was they wanted. Windows, they all want to replace their windows. Energy efficiency, I have stuff from your website on our website. I have the list of all the wood window repair people, restoration people that are in the state. One of the biggest thing for me is staff support. We do not have administrative staff support. So someone goes into the building office and says, I want to fill up out an application for change of appearance.
Do you want me to pull that form up for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have to check off what materials they're using, besides where it is. We ask for cut sheets or bring in samples or something like that, so that the product is, we know everything for the week before we get to the meeting. We can look up the material and see what the standards are from whoever sets that. And the extent of life that this material might have it. If it's something that typically has to replace in kind, but these days that's a hard thing to sell, particularly to people that didn't want to be in the historic district. This will do what I want to get back to it. But I think for the most part, people have come to appreciate that even newcomers, that they're in the historic district. We had folks came in last week, 2 weeks ago. They needed to fix their front porch because the husband had actually stepped through the stoop. And their concern was that when they bought the house, it had been painted, the steps had been painted gray, and the rest of it, the rails and balusters and the connection to the house were all white. And do I have to do gray? And no, we don't police color. That was another big conception we had to get over. Gray, whatever. This is what people are used to saying, but you own it now. They actually ended up with a product that's navy wood. It's what boats are made of, and it's a nice wood that's going to last for a long time, and they don't have to paint it at all. So they came away happy. Their neighbor, who was one of the 5% that did not want to be in the historic district, fully supported the idea. It was fine. He was coming to change his railing, and it's an old Queen Anne shingle style roof, has a round railing, kind of low, fat balusters, fat rail, curved, of course, and it was rotting, and he wanted to replace it. And he recommended or proposed to replace it with the same kind of railing that you see on the bandstand. Nice metal rail, skinny metal rail. And I said to him, you don't live in the bandstand, you live in your home. They're not the same treatment. And so we denied the application because it just did not fit in with the scope, the mass of the building, and what it was intended to, if he had done something plain but still thick, he might have said okay. But he did it was an off-the-fence kind of thing. We said no. He appealed to the zoning board. No one in the planning department told anyone on the HDC that there was an appeal. So there was no one from the HDC at the zoning meeting to plead our case. And one of the zoning members said, we really ought to respect the decision of other land use boards.
Oh, that's a good one.
One out of 5. So it was, the guy got his permission and has a railing that he promised he would be sitting on his porch looking out at the traffic, and I have not seen him once, and I live just up the street. So it's things like that, for me, not having the administrative support doesn't reach people that are making applications for these things. We have our town master plan, which is required by the state, actually, for every town to have a master plan. And in it, under the town lead or the town support, it says TBD. And that was a short-term goal to finish that, and it still says TBD. And this is from 2014, I think. So what happens is someone goes in with an application, they fill out the application,
I know, I can't pull it up, I'm
we
sorry.
can pull it up at the end, but the application calls out for those things. Do you have a cut sheet? Do you have a sample? Do you have manufacturer? Are you being represented by your contractor? There's several questions that they have to check off. But we also have to check off from the planning and building staff. Did this person come in with that? Yes. Did this person come in with that? And the idea was to make sure the person came in with that. And because before that, we had long discussions with an applicant saying, well, what material are you using for that? What does it look like? Did you bring a sample? So we had a lot of discussion before we could even start to come to a decision about whether the treatment was appropriate or not. So, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Dominating the whole thing.
I just want to make sure we get to the hot topics.
So making this, we had a couple of younger people or architects said this is really cumbersome. It was one application for new construction, change in appearance, and signage, all on one application. And we answered a little bit different questions. So we broke it down into 3 different applications. So people only had to provide, so much information for the particular project that they were doing. And they get the application, but they are never shown our guidelines. And I will ask every applicant that comes in, oh, did you see our guidelines before you proposed to change into some other material use? And they say no.
Are they on the web?
They are on the web, and they're on the web.
Those look terrific, by the way. I took a picture of the cover of it because I was just flipping it in the bookstore.
Yeah, it sounds like...
That's pre-dam removal.
Yeah, it's pre-dam removal. The water is...
Because the
nice
basement's
and
flooded.
It's still great to have that much detail because it gives you, as a layperson, concrete visual representation of a bunch of answers to questions.
Well, that's exactly what we wanted for both the applicants and again for the HDC itself and the Heritage Commission even, so that we can get people who are not necessarily specialized in
Right.
what we're doing there, but they can learn from it, and the homeowners can learn from it.
Was that prepared by a consultant, and how long did it take to prepare?
Oh, it didn't take as long as I thought. It was a CLG project.
So it had to be less than 2 years.
Yeah, ours took about a year.
And she did it the same year she did mine. So, yeah.
Reagan, can you talk, I mean, you're obviously a larger community, you do have staff support, if I'm correct, but you still run into challenges and issues, and can you talk about kind of some of the hot ones?
Some of the hot issues.
Housing pressure, solar panels, whatever.
Yes, all of the above. I mean,
The
there's...
ship.
Yes, so we do have staff support, but one person, and even that, still only is as good as that one person knows what needs to be done. So I'll just leave it at that. But it is incredibly helpful to have that one person. Our pressures are the same as probably what everybody else sees. So it's window replacements. Right now, we've got a lot of chimney removals that are coming before us, which is a tricky one. We have, in the past 10 years or so, allowed some chimney replacements, faux chimney replacements, where they remove the chimney because they want this space inside the house, and so they'll put up a fake chimney in its place that is basically a wood box faced with brick. But we're now seeing those fail because it's not a permanent fixture of building. It's just a representative little structure, and so those fail, and then they come back and say, well, it's making a roof leak, can we take it off? So there's that. There's a lot of housing. You know, I think one of the things that as a preservationist everybody knows is that money is often the enemy of preservation. In Portsmouth, we're seeing so much money come in because the properties are so expensive, and people will buy, you know, a $2 million house that is a 1750s house that needs a lot of work, and what they'll end up doing is asking us for all new siding, all new windows, all new trim, new roof, you know, redone chimney or no chimney and a faux chimney, and they've gutted the inside. And so at the very end of the project, it may totally meet all of our guidelines to say, yes, you're using wood trim, yes, you're using the same wood clapboards, you know, your windows are acceptable from replacements that we use, but you don't have a historic house anymore. And so
Are you seeing that a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, yes. And so, so that's one of the pressures we have, you know, and in Portsmouth, like I was saying, we have a lot of empty lots that they kept in the historic district so that there would be some sort of design review for it. And that's been really challenging too, because you have a group of people that don't know how to say whether or not this new design is appropriate because it's not in a historic context. You're just surrounded by other parking lots. And so, so that's when you get, like if anybody's been in Portsmouth in the last 15 years, you get Port Walk, which is this sort of new fake historic town, or, you know, that is in the middle, and it had to have our review because it's in the historic district, but it's a brand new building. So to Brandy's point, where, you know, you don't want to make fake old buildings, but how do you make them, how do you make a modern, contemporary building appropriate for historic context? And that is really tough for a lot of people if you don't have any training or any, you know, understanding or sensitivity and that sort of thing.
Must be some architects around here that know how to do it.
I feel like, if you don't mind me, I feel like it can be pretty subjective also.
Yes, it can be.
You know, as to what is an appropriate design in that.
Yes, I mean, yeah, we have lots of architects, but you know, one architect can say, here is my interpretation of what an appropriate building, you know, pulling all of these different aspects of our community and our past and stuff like that, and here's what it is. And, you know, half of the other people can say, well, I don't like it. But again, you know, the purpose of your historic district is not, what did you call it, aesthetic policing?
Aesthetic policing.
So it doesn't matter, when you're in the Historic District Commission, it doesn't matter whether or not you like it. It's whether or not it meets these different criteria and is appropriate.
Having to remind
Yeah.
members to don't use the word like.
Don't use the word like. I mean,
Don't say pretty, don't say like.
I mean, you can say at the end, like, this is great, I really like your project, but it has to be followed up by, and it's appropriate.
Right.
Well,
So,
you could talk a little about that, because that also sounds like a kind of word that's open to interpretation. When you say appropriate, what does that mean to you?
well, I mean, we have guidelines. We have the Secretary of Interior standards. You know, we have some parameters around what is appropriate. Is the massing similar to what's around it? Is you know, the style or materials or fenestration, window openings type things? You know, is it totally out of scale of what its context is, or is it, you know, does it
So
match?
how did the building where Hearth was
Yes.
get built?
So that is one that is a very good example. I don't know if everybody here is familiar in Portsmouth with, there's a building on Daniel Street that got built 5 years ago or so. And it is very different from everything around it, but this is exactly the example I was talking about, where you have a designer come in and say, you know, these aspect, here, this aspect of my design is drawing from shipbuilding, the shipbuilding history of Portsmouth. And, here are things that that are echoing the waves, or here, we made it a certain height to be appropriate with what is across the street. And it was a very, everybody had their own interpretation of whether or not that was appropriate. One of the things we also battle is that came into play with this particular application was we need to make new architecture, not fake old buildings. So you had some people in the crowd who were fascinated by this new design, and it was different and it was cool, and people were going to come to Portsmouth and see this, and it was going to really stand out. You had some people who said, this is an abomination, it's so totally different, it's not brick, it's not historic, it doesn't belong here in the middle of our historic district. By the way, there was a parking lot there before. It didn't replace the new building. And then you had some, like myself, who said, I don't want a fake old building here. I want great new architecture here. But this doesn't seem appropriate for it. This isn't quite contextual enough. So, and within a historic district, it just depends on who is making up the historic district at that moment, or the commission at that moment. So, and a lot of it does, I think, a good, helpful piece of any contentious project like that is public input. We certainly had a lot of people in the public coming to talk about this building, whether they loved it or hated it. But if you can, that's, something like that certainly is a way to get your community fired up.
So was that
to become involved and start paying attention.
Ultimately approved by Historic District? And have either of you had to litigate any of your decisions, like rejection?
Just that little railing.
You didn't take them to court?
Oh, no, we've never.
That's what I'm asking. Have either of you had to litigate?
No,
Yes.
I think our districts have been established since the 70s, so there's no fooling anybody buying a property in Exeter that doesn't know it, except for my neighbor can find out until the date he was closing.
Until you knocked on his door and said hello.
But no, we've never had litigation. One of the things that helps with that is that you have to have a butter notification for a historic district project, and that can start your ripple of how do you communicate to the rest of your town. The Demolition Review Committee under the Heritage Commission, although it does not have a butter notification. So something's proposed to be demolished, and 3 people know that, the owner and 3 people on the commission, make a visit, make a recommendation, and nobody knows at all. So one of my missions as a state rep is to change that law.
Thank you, because I agree with that.
Yeah, that abutters need to be notified, because we had a project that, well, no, this is outside of that purview. We had a project that somebody went in for renovating the interior of their house, and they went in for an electrical permit and other building parts that they needed. And after getting that on Friday, on Saturday, the bulldozer came in and demolished the whole building. And they had not come in for a demolition permit. But at that point, what could we do about it? And it was a beautiful beam structure.
We haven't had litigation. We haven't had enough space to have litigation. But our Heritage Commission was, in a sense, shut down in regards to St. Joe's. The Heritage, because there was so much publicity on the saving of St. Joe's, that there were members of the Heritage Commission that could no longer speak to it, and so they couldn't. I don't remember all of this 8 years ago or so, but there were members on the Heritage Commission that were told that they could not vote or speak regarding the outcome in their meeting about St. Joe's, because they had been outwardly speaking to the saving of St. Joe's. And so that kind of put them at that time in a position that, wasn't wasn't helpful to the saving of it.
We had a member that did the same thing. It was just one member of the Heritage Commission, and she was so vocal about her opinion on it. She also sat as the HDC rep. So she was the HDC rep on the Heritage Commission. So when that project came to the HDC, we had to ask her to leave the room because she could not be quiet about her disapproval.
So it goes back to your statement about you need to be vocal and talk to people, but it's a fine line what you're doing, what you're saying, and how you're doing it. And these women were not like with pickets, but we were all over the news, and so that was something that they weren't going to allow.
That goes back to Reagan's point as well about how, you've got to make sure that your decisions are based on your regulations and not if you like it or whatever the case might be.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we have had litigation. I wouldn't say frequently, but it's not unheard of for appeals to go through, and then they go to the ZBA, and sometimes they'll get bumped up. And there have been development projects, again, the new buildings, that a community coalition of people will go through and appeal it all the way up to the state Supreme Court. And often the majority of the time, the courts will side with us and say that we've made a sound decision, we've looked at everything, but it is something that we talk about in our commission all the time. In fact, we just talked about it this week, where you have to make sure that your regulations and your ordinance has very specific things in there, and that all of your decisions, because they can be so subjective, have to have ground for those decisions. So we have purpose and we have several different things that are purpose and intent, and so every time we take a vote, we have to say this meets these different criteria for this decision to make sure that we have some legal standing.
Randy, there's this gentleman on the end of it. Did you have a question? You have some-
I did. I came in late in case you already covered this, but I have a question about your relationship to the local business community and whether they are involved, outspoken, supportive of having historic districts in town.
I think we all have three different experiences.
Yeah, and it's a little, like I said earlier, it's odd. I work with the local businesses a lot through the Historical Society, and they're fabulous. These business owners, it is rare that I walk in there and someone says no to weird, crazy ideas that I have. And so they are very, and a lot of them have to do with historical stuff. But when it came to and they've known me for a long time, so I kind of felt like, who I am, I'm not here to ruin the place.
Yeah.
But, so now here's the Historic District Commission, and here are the ordinances we're working with, and this is what we're doing. And I think they were comfortable enough with me to say to me, no, that we don't like this isn't. So it's interesting to me how, because in Laconia, honestly, look at us. The Colonial Theater, the Belknap Mill, the Lakeport Opera House. The Goss Reading Room has stuff going on. I mean, we are saving things left and right? But this just seems to be something that isn't clearly being, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
I do want to just pipe in very quickly. We have about 10 minutes left. I know there's at least one more question, and I want to just cover a couple of things as well. So if Julie and Reagan don't mind giving a quick answer.
My quick answer is because our commercial district is so short that it's easy to say to the owners, this is why you should participate. And like I said earlier, we've had owners come in thinking that we would be a stumbling block, and then working with them, they realized, we're actually improving, what they had decided to do. So something like Portsmouth, which has a much larger group to be working with.
It's the same. I mean, I think that there are people who are nervous that they've got to go through us to get something approved, but as long as the person doesn't come at us, in an aggressive fashion, we all sit down and we all want to get a better outcome.
We had a question over here.
So I know that some HDCs hire economists like Donovan Ripma to do these economic evaluations of historic districts. So I'm wondering, I don't know if Portsmouth did one. I'm wondering if the cost of doing it would be worth the benefit of showing people that there is economic vitality for businesses and personal real estate. Did you do?
We did not do one. I think it would absolutely be helpful to show people. I think there are a lot of people that, I don't know if people in Exeter feel the same way, but our historic district is so well established that I think that they take it for granted and they're like, well, of course these properties are valued so high because, you know, everything is so well maintained and it's pretty and it's Portsmouth. And you're like, well, it's that way because we have a historic district.
I think to answer your question, what I use is I refer to an article that's on the Division of Historical Resources website, which says what are historic districts good for anyway, which talks about how the improvements or the preservation can bring in more business and be more attractive to businesses. And you know, like I went on a tour, or I did a tour at downtown, and we have hardly had an empty building since we took the dam down. So the turnover of business, you know, some go, some stay, but we've seen an increase in keeping businesses. We have not done an economic study about it. I'm not sure that we're big enough really to do.
I would say that if you're having, we didn't do one obviously, but in the position that we're in, it would be something I would find of interest to see if that would, because we've used the historic resources, everything. I mean, the conversation, so many conversations. So to try and explain and write. So if you do one, I'd love to know what your outcome was, because I would maybe consider that going forward.
I just wanted to introduce something. So one of the things I've been exploring regarding incentives is a low interest or no interest loan program for historic districts that to fund facade improvements. So across the country, there are these programs in place, and a lot of them have to do with business districts, but they do involve residential incorporation into that district or residential areas. And a lot of those are funded with community development block grant programs, which I don't know if Exeter has access to that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I know like a town like Manchester or whatever would, but so they've decided to earmark some of those funds for loan programs so people could do the facades of the exterior of their buildings, including windows.
So that's something to advertise somewhere really big. The front page of our website.
Additionally, you know, the baby boomers really are holding a lot of wealth, and it would be a good effort to encourage baby boomers to leave some of their wealth to public buildings, and a loan program like this, or other types of things to support the historic investment of the town. And I'm interested in looking at that too.
So question for you on that.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you were researching this,
Yeah.
and you were saying that this loan program works for historic districts only, or?
It would be something declared by like a Main Street program or a historic, well, I would limit it to historic districts because of as an incentive. I mean, you could do whatever a town would want to do, but.
Yeah, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
just as we're talking incentive, right, for
the
having,
homeowner.
well, just
Business
for
owner.
homeowner in right, that'd be great, but correlating it to what, you know, everyone's been talking about, like
Yeah.
how do we, I think everyone here is probably here like wanting to learn how
Yeah.
they can achieve creating a historic district. So, I mean, I think that there's challenges
Yes,
that,
yeah.
you know, come up,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm very interested to hear your story with Laconia, because I think that the three of you, it's great, you all have different perspective, Exeter and Portsmouth, though, you guys have been, your districts have been founded for a very long time. You both,
Very jealous.
you know, so I think that they're very different. And I also want to pose the question of, and maybe you might know,
Brandy.
For the state, I'm just curious, how many historic districts in the state, what's the correlation between those historic districts, those towns that are more liberal versus conservative? And I just think that personally, more historic districts are in liberal communities versus conservative communities. That's just my take on it, and I'm just curious, you know, if there's data around that.
I don't know that there is data around that, but the Office of Planning and Development does have a list of communities that have historic districts, so if you wanted to look into that, you could certainly do that. We are right at the end, so I just want to do a quick overview here of resources for folks. Obviously, the Preservation Alliance, fabulous resource for folks on HDCs or looking to get one established, or Heritage Commissions, anything like that. Our office, the Division of Historical Resources, I would be your contact if you have questions. I'm happy to chat with you as well. The New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the Office of Planning and Development, I always would like people to remember, if you're on a historic district commission, you are a land use board, the same as a planning board, the same as a zoning board. You are entitled to the same resources as your planning and zoning boards. So ask your town, ask your staff people, whoever you have, if you need access to these resources, okay? Or reach out directly to OPD, the folks are great there. The National Alliance of Preservation Commissions is a fabulous resource. The dues are very low threshold. They're based on the population of your community. So most communities in New Hampshire, you would pay $50, and that would get your entire commission access to a lot of information on the National Alliance of Preservation Commission websites, as well as access to trainings and webinars and things like that they do. Really great resource. I also want to thank our 3 panelists. They're very knowledgeable, very experienced. I really appreciate you sharing your successes as well as your struggles, because I know that that can sometimes be a feeling that folks on boards have, is that they feel kind of alone in their struggles, but really, unfortunately, everybody is struggling here and there. So please also remember to reach out to other communities. If you have neighboring communities that have historic districts, or if there's another community in the state that you think has a similar makeup to your town, reach out to their board and see if you can make a connection with somebody there. You might be, facing the same issues, and maybe they found a solution, or maybe you can just have a beer and complain about it. Thank you.